very quickly yesterday. So again, according to Rav Yossi Bar Chanina, we make two calculations. What's that? Is that whatever the damage is, we don't value it in and of the own plot of land. We calculate the value of a base se'ah. And what we do is we say that this is 1/60th of a base se'ah. So in other words, say you've damaged half a base se'ah. You still take the value of a base se'ah and times it by 60 and see the context of a half a base se'ah when sold in a plot of land of 60 base se'ahs in order to see the sort of damage involved. So for example, a base se'ah, if it was sold on its own, would fetch 15 gold coins. And that's a problem. The reason why that's a problem is that only poor people could afford small patches of land, and therefore they would pay top dollar. So if you had to buy 60 base se'ah, you're paying 600 gold coins, which means a 60th of it is only 10 gold coins. So you're paying more market-related rate. Okay. So Rav Yanai had a different opinion. He said, look, that's still a little bit unfair because the damaged party doesn't get enough money. So he said, look, what you need to do is evaluate it at base Tarkov, which is half a base se'ah, in relation to 60 base Tarkov, which is 30 base se'ah. So how does that work in practicality? Is that when you had, for example, a base se'ah, according to Rav Yossi Bar Chanina, instead of a base hakav, you would say that 30 base se'ah would give you 300 gold coins. Okay, but if you make it a base hakav, what would 60 of the base hakav sell for, which is actually 30 base se'ah? So what would occur then is you actually, instead of paying 300 gold coins, are paying 360 gold coins. Okay, so what that would mean is 360 gold coins, and you divide that plot by 60, means that each base se'ah is worth 12 coins. Why? Because each base hakav is actually worth 6 coins. Okay, does that make sense? Because 6 times 60 is 360. So what we're saying is you actually would be paying 12 gold coins instead of 10. So it's more related to what's fair for the damaged party. And then obviously Chizkiah says, look, we're talking principles here. Whatever it is in terms of the damage, you just times by 60. So each of them are coming to a related price of what the land is seen in context to a larger portion of it. Okay. Now, where we're having an issue here is that the rabbis taught in a brisa, we don't evaluate a kav because it profits him, and we do not evaluate a base core because it depletes him. So the Gemara asks, what are you talking about? What the brisa is saying? And Rav Papa gives a good explanation. He says, this is what it's saying. We don't evaluate a kav in relation to 60 kavs. Why? Because if you remember, guys, it profits the damager. How does it profit the damager? Well, according to Rav Papa, the brisa presumes that our Mishnah's ruling that the devastated area is appraised not on its own, but as a deduction from the price of a larger field. So then the brisa's got this argument backwards and forwards about how big the other field should be that are taken into account. So if a cover of produce was destroyed, the field against which it's assessed should not be 60 times larger. So in other words, this doesn't seem to be going according to what? Guys, according to Chizkiah, right? One that produces 60 cups. Because if you did that calculation, it benefits the damager. And it means that it benefits the damager because he's paying the damaged party an unfairly small payment. Why? Well, firstly, the field that produces 60 cubs is relatively cheap because it's quite difficult to sell. It's too large for poor people, so there goes most of your population that could buy it. And it's too small for anybody else because the Wealthier people aren't going to buy it, and the middle class aren't going to buy it. It's very impractical. So since the field is cheap, the discount given for the damage, which is obviously a certain proportion of the price, will be small. So the problem is, another reason is that if you take that area, apart from the discounted price of what you're going to get for it because it's impractical, is too small in context to the larger field, and its devastation wouldn't really affect the selling price of the field that much. That's according to Rashi. Why? Because if we have a look and we see, well, what is a core? A core, if you remember, guys, is the area. It's land. It's a field. A core is an area of produce, and one core equals 30 se'ahs or 180 cubs. And a kav is a volume of food that's produced in a field, which is 1/6 of a se'ah. So that's why kav is not appraised on its own, but part of a larger field. But a core, you're going to have a little bit of a difficulty. Does that make sense? So as far as Rav Papa is concerned, again, what are we talking about here? We're talking about specifically a kav and a core. So let me just put it back in context. So if Rav Papa said that basically we do not evaluate a kav in relation to 60 cubs because it profits the damager, a kav is 1/6 of a se'ah. So it's so small that when you put that in context, and that's 1/6 of a se'ah, and you times it by 60, you're going to hardly notice that it's going to affect the price. I'll give you an idea of what it's equivalent to. If I say to you, I'm taking a kilogram of flour from you, you would go to the shops and say it's 25 Rand for a kilogram of flour, of snowflake flour. But if I say, guys, I'm going to buy, there's a truckload. I was watching a bakery program the other day of bakers, and they take a truckload of flour and unravel that. And if you take a kilogram of flour compared to 30 metric tons, it's just not going to affect the price at all. So that's ridiculous. So you need to find that sweet spot where it's not going to be ridiculously expensive or out of proportion or ridiculously negligible compared to the larger area. Does that make sense? So what the problem is that a kav is too small and a core is too big. That's what Rav Papa is saying. Okay. Now, what we're saying is, and we can't evaluate a core in relation to 60 cores. Now, remember, guys, how big is a core? Just testing you compared to a kav. You should know it by now. What's the difference? Firstly, Arthur, what's the difference between a kav and a core?
A kav is 60 and a core is half that.
No.
Okay. Well, I know a kav is like a much bigger one, and a core is a much smaller one.
No.
So, Danny, what do you want me to say? Your screen's broken. What do you want me to say to you? Dropped his screen. Now it's broken.
Is it worth the cover or record the screen, Arthur?
Arthur,
it ain't covering it, ain't a core in there anymore.
Only the processors are core, Arthur.
There's only an F core in there.
All right, guys, come. Let's get back on track. Listen, Arthur's got a genuine excuse. He's got a hell of a lot of play. This is not...
Late, yes.
So, okay, so Kev, what's the difference between a kav and a core?
Are you talking about the actual...
What the fuck you want to do, Danny?
Arthur.
Just...
I've muted you. Oh, don't worry. Okay, Kev, what's the difference between a
Okay, I think the kav is smaller. It's the smallest quantity.
Okay.
It's the smallest quantity. It's like which is, you said the calculation was 1/60th of so 360 divided by 60 is 6.
Now, hang on a sec. Listen, I'll give it to you in one regard, is that a kav is smaller than a core. I'm happy with that. so far. Gab,
Okay.
do you have any more details than that? Gav?
Yeah.
Do you have any more details than that?
No. Just leave me out. Sorry.
All right,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fine. All right, so guys, let me just
I
explain
can't
it
do
again. Guys, you're not well, so let me just explain it again. Also, there's different concepts that we're dealing with. Okay? There's a base se'ah, and a base se'ah is twice the size of a base tarkor. Not tarkor. I'm getting tongue-tied.
Tarkov, isn't it?
Sorry, tarkav. Okay. So tarkav, base tarkav, is half the size of a base se'ah. Okay. So what we are saying is here, according to Rav Yossi Bar Chanina, we have to take the base se'ah and times it by 60 base se'ah. And whatever the damage is, that'll give us the contextual relation to get a decent price. Because if you sell a base se'ah on its own, you're paying a ridiculously high amount because it's only what the poor people are able to afford. And we know throughout history, people have taken advantage of the poor. So that is the opinion of Rav Yossi Bar Chanina. Rav Yanai said that gets a too low a price for the damaged party. And he's saying, rather let's use a base tarkav, which is half a base tarkor. Okay? So what he's saying is you take a base tarkav times that by 60. So the difference in principle, as we said, is if a normal base se'ah would on its own be sold to the poor for 15 gold coins. When you're taking 60 of those, you're buying 60 of those for 600 gold coins. And if you divide it by 60, then you're only paying 10 gold coins per base se'ah. So you calculate whatever damage there is proportionately based on that. And Rav Yanai says that's too little for the damaged party. So he's saying if you take it on the base tarkor and you times that by 60, that half size wouldn't render 300 gold coins. It would actually render 360 because you're not getting that super discounted rate. And why should you? You know, if the poor don't, why should you? And why should you pay top dollar either? There should be a happy medium. So you would be paying 360 for 60 base tarkav. You'd be paying 360 gold coins. You divide that by 60, you're paying 12 gold coins each instead of 10 gold coins each, because you're paying for a base tarkav 6 gold coins, and if you times that by 2 to get the base se'ah, per base se'ah you're paying 12 gold coins, or if you'd like 6 gold coins per base tarkav. Okay? And Chizkiah said you just times it by 60. So now Rav Papa is saying, look, there's a problem, because you can't use the same formula for a core as you can for a kav, for 2 reasons. You're dealing with 2 different points of measurement here. A kav is a volumetric yield that a field gives you in terms of food produced. Does that make sense? And a core is an area. It's the actual field. So in other words, if I've got a hectare of land, it doesn't mean that I'm going to get a hectare of yield. I might only get 200 kilograms of yield from a hectare of land. So you can't interchange it. Does that make sense? You have to take these factors into account. Either you're talking about volumetric, or you're talking about surface area, and then you're talking about yield. So that's one of the things that you have to take into account. And when you're talking about a core of an area of produce, you can't take it and then, because a core, a standard size of a core is 30 se'ahs, or 60 base tarkavs, which is exactly the principle of Rav Yanai. Okay? And how much yield does 60 base calves bring, or 30 base se'ahs bring? In other words, the core, how many calves will it give you out of a field? So it gives you 180 calves. Does that make sense, guys? So in other words, the volumetric size is, I'm saying, if we've got 30 fields of 30 se'ahs, it'll give you 180 calves. But that's a core. So out of a core, you get 180 calves. And what is a calf? It gives you 1/6 of a se'ah. So that's your yield. So to take a very complicated issue of formula and make it very simple, I just want to teach you the principle behind that. And that principle, according to Rav Papa, is he's saying we don't evaluate a Kabb in relation to 60 calves because it profits the damager. Because if you're looking at that sort of rate, what's the reason, Kevin, that it would profit the damager? There's two reasons.
At that rate.
In other words, a Kabb, again, a Kabb is 1/6 of a se'ah. Okay? So what Rav Papa is saying is as follows, is that we don't evaluate a Kabb in relation to 60 calves because it profits the damager. Why would it profit the damager? It's a Kabb, it's not a core. So remember, Kabb is smaller than a core. Because a core is 30 se'ahs. And what is a Kabb? 1/6 of a se'ah.
That's 6.
It will get lost in the. It will get lost. It will dilute.
Correct.
Too diluted.
Insignificant.
Exactly, guys. It'll be too insignificant. So the first thing is as follows: is you've got to look at that. If you take that portion of land and you go according to a prescribed field and say, look, let's do it 60 times larger. Okay, let's just do it 60 times larger, and you go according to Chizkiah's opinion. You're still sitting with the problem. What's the problem? Is that it doesn't fit any financial party, because a smaller tract of land is popular amongst the poor because they can't afford a lot of land. But it's too small a land for you to use practically if you're middle class, because you can't do anything with it. Does that make sense? In other words, you can't do commercial farming, and it's too big for subsistence farming for a family. So it's going to be difficult. That's your first problem. So it's sold cheaply. Do you understand why it's sold cheaply? It's an odd size. It's an odd size. It's like it's like a family can't. It's too big for a poorer person to afford, and not big enough for commercial farming. So it goes cheaply because it's pretty useless to every party. So firstly, the land is cheap and it's undervalued. Number two is that it's such a small amount, if you times that by 160, because you're saying it's, if you're going according, if you're going to, whether you're going according to Rav Yanai, even if you're going according to the opinion of maybe Rav Yossi Bar Chanina, it's insignificant. So the land is being sold at a very cheap rate, and number two is that you're using only a fraction of the land, so you're going to get next to nothing for it if you're the damaged party. Right, you understand that? Now we're going to go on. And he's saying now that deals with the issue of a Kabb. But if you take a core, which is the opposite extreme in relation to 60 cores, it's going to deplete the damager. Why? Because let's look at the difference. A core is 30 se'ahs. A Kabb is 1/6 of a se'ah. So he's saying, listen, this is going to make somebody go broke. Now, the question I have on this is, if your animal damaged that much of 30 se'ahs, what did you release? Did you release 200 cows to do that sort of damage? I mean, seriously, if you did that sort of damage, guys, why shouldn't you pay for it? And how much time did you need for it to do that sort of damage? Do you understand the problem? That's a fortune of damage. So why? So it didn't happen in a vacuum either. So I need to ask Rabbi Cohen that, because the animal you must have needed many animals and a lot of time to do that sort of damage. But bearing that in mind, if it damages if it affects the damager, why? It's going to apply the exact same principles. What does that mean? If it ate, if the animal, I love the way it said, if the animal ate, if many animals that you own ate a core, which is 30 se'ahs or 180 cups of produce, you can't deal with it as a deduction. Firstly, because if it's an unusually large tract of land, who would buy it?
The wealthy.
Yes, and would they pay a low fee or a high fee, and why?
Well, then they'll pay a higher fee because that's attractive, that land. They'll pay a premium.
Why?
Because it's popular. It's like the poor land. The small pieces are popular with the poor people, so you pay a premium. And the large pieces are hard to come by. They're very hard to come by. They aren't. It's few and far between. So when they do come up, they sell at a premium.
Okay, that's excellent, because it was counterintuitive to what I originally thought. I thought if you buy a huge tract of land, you'd be able to get a discount. But what I learned subsequently in my research is that what would happen with a wealthy person is he'd have to negotiate with each of his neighbors in order to have a decent size land, and then each of them could extort him, because basically it's like somebody that owns a house in the middle of a shopping center. He gets top rand for it because they can't do the development unless he gets out the way. So with a larger tract of land, you don't have neighbors to deal with. It's actually very convenient. So therefore you would pay a bit of a premium for that. That's absolutely true, Gavin. And therefore you're overpaying for the land, because a wealthy landowner doesn't want to have pockets of tenants in between him. So the land would be out of proportionately high. And if you have a look at a core worth of damage, it's already 30 se'ahs, and it's devastatingly large, and it's going to be expensive. So the question is then, how would you assess that particular sort of damage? So there are different opinions. There's an opinion by Tosfot who said, since the core is larger than a se'ah, because it's 30 se'ahs, we can't adopt the standard procedure that the damage is evaluated as a reduction from the field that produces a se'ah. Rather, the damaged core is viewed as though it was divided into se'ahs, in other words, 30 se'ahs. We then reckon how much each of their se'ahs would diminish the price of a field that produces 60 se'ahs. So according to Rashi and Tosfot, all you would do is say, listen, if you're holding like Rav Yanai, that's already your 60 base tarkov. You're done. You're done. According to the opinion of Rav Yossi Bar Chanina, you would just times it by 2 and then work out 50% of that sort of cost. Does that make sense? Because it did eat that much land. But you have to look at it within the context of larger land, so you're not paying the out of proportion price. Not too low for the land, nor too high. So it would be that sweet spot once again. Okay, so far, that's what it covers. Just want to see how much time we've got left. How much time have we got? Is yours giving a time clock?
No, mine's on the phone. Never gives me a time clock.
All right. So let's just carry on. All right. So guys, that's the opinion of Rav Papa, but the Gemara rejects this interpretation of the Brisa because Rav Huna bar Manoach objected to it on the following grounds. He said we don't evaluate a base core, should have been, and we do not evaluate a core. Okay, So what's the difference between a base core and a core? Guys?
I can't remember.
Okay, so if you want to say you say base midrash, what are you talking about there? You're talking about a house, which is a field. It's, in other words, you're dealing with hectares, acres, square meterage. You're dealing with land. Okay, does that make sense? But a core, so he's basically saying that you can't interchange the term core and kav because you're dealing with two different units of measurement. In other words, according to Rav Papa's explanation, the two parts of the brisa refer to parallel situations. You've got a kav and a core, and they evaluate it in relation that produces 60 kavs or 60 cores. So what he's saying is you can't work on that sort of explanation because it's not the yield. In other words, if you're saying you can't say interchange kavs and cores, because if you say 60 kavs, you're talking about 30 seahs or one core. So he says you can't interchange the words. You're dealing with one as volumetric weight and the other one is field. It's a field. But he's saying you can't evaluate a kav in relation to a base core because it depletes the damaged party. Rather, we evaluate in relation to a field 60 times larger than the devastated area. So who does he hold by then, guys? Guys, who does he hold by then? In other, all right. In other words, guys, what I'm saying is Rav Huna bar Manoach interpreted the brisa in a way that avoided Rav Papa's objection. In other words, it switches from a kav, which is volumetric, to a base core, which is area, because it used a kav in reference to produce that was damaged and a base core in reference to a field against which the damage is assessed. So he was saying, as long as you keep your calculations are correct, then that's fine. That's the main thing, but you can't go it alternatively. But if you keep according to Chizkiah, you're fine, because you're just timesing it by 60. So therefore it all works out. So he learns it according to the principle of Chizkiah, because he said you're not going to get confused compared to the other two opinions when you're dealing with volumetric weight or the produce from the field. Does that make sense? He said it's an easier way to work it out. Okay, so before we discuss another incident, we've got about 9 minutes remaining. How many of you would like to call it a day now and let Kevin teach us?
Me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin.
Thanks.
I've been outvoted.
Teach us now. No, I voted.
Okay. No, I'm joking. I'm only joking. No, I get. Okay, so continuing on the theme of davening and prayer, halachas. Let's just see. Sorry, I'm just going to find something. I'm going to be chopping and changing. It's not going to be in sequence. So, okay. Okay, we did counting. Okay, here we go. Here's another question. Okay. If I'm davening, and this applies to Israel, if I'm davening in a Nusach Sfard or Nusach Ari Shul, that is like Chabad. Nusach Sfard is actually the Nusach that even Ashkenazim, most Ashkenazim have adopted in Israel to accommodate Sephardim. It's a combination of Ashkenaz and Sephardim. What we daven with in South Africa, that's Nusach Ashkenaz. So it's a slight variation. Okay, am I allowed to answer Amen in the area of davening where it's completely different, like a Kaddish? They don't answer Amen. Sephardim, you say, in Kaddish, one of the responses is Brichu. The Sephardim say Amen, and Ashkenazim say Brichu. So it's it says here, am I allowed to answer Amen where it would interrupt would be an interruption, such as in Pesuka de Zumra between Prakim. So it says it's the same thing. It doesn't make a difference. Saying Brichu instead of saying Amen isn't a major deal. Okay, that's a bit technical. Let's find another question here. Okay, here's something. Okay, a Balkari, completely different. A Balkari, someone had an emission during the night, seminal emission. A question is, can a Balkari tie tefillin from a Sefer Torah? A tefillin sorry, can a Bal? It says what? Okay, it's a weird question. Can he read from the Sefer Torah and even kiss it if he hasn't been to the mikveh to purify himself? So actually the answer is he may put on tefillin, get an aliyah and kiss the Sefer Torah, even though he hasn't gone to the mikveh. Reason for this is because of the Takana of Ezra, who was Botil or Bittel, because it was too hard. Therefore, it was too hard for people, especially probably in the Middle Ages in Europe, in the middle of winter. It's like Arctic, and maybe it just wasn't practical. So, but it says the Rishonim said one should go to the mikveh and make himself tahor before davening or learning, if possible. Therefore, there's a strong preference to go to the mikveh beforehand. However, a person should be careful not to miss Zman Kriyat Shema and Zman Tefillah. Regarding the Tefillah of the Tzibur, or the Tefillah of the community, Mishnah Paskins that one should not miss Tefillah B'Tzibur in order to go to the mikveh. So it's like a double-edged sword here. If you go early, but if you don't get up so early, then you're going to miss the Amper davening, especially in a minyan. What else? Yeah.
So can I just add something? I don't know how true it is. I was told by somebody I thought was quite reliable. He said if that happens and you can't get to a mikveh, which is most of the time, then you can just take a shower and stand under it for like 20 seconds.
Not 3 minutes.
Well, that's pretty much the same thing, I guess.
20 seconds. Okay. Then it says here.
Well, you told 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to find out.
People say 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll double
because it's
check
especially also in Yom Kippur. If you're not near a mikveh and you want to have a mikveh before Yom Kippur, you can have it in a shower.
You can have it in a shower.
But it's 3. But you got to stand under for 3 minutes.
All right, I'll double check. I mean, the chances are you're right.
Listen, by the time you start up, 3 minutes was gone.
But it's no, so without soap, I think. Without soap.
Why can't you soap if you're under a shower?
Because soap is a barrier.
I've never heard of soap.
When you're going to, I'm just saying, I'm assuming when you're going to a mikveh, your body, you can't have anything, no creams, no, your body, you go into a shower before you go into a mikveh, you can't have any barriers. And soap, it's like you can't have rings or jewelry, it's a barrier, the skin has to be exposed. And
so do the mikveh.
If you got a bar of soap here, I get it. I get it if you've got a bar of soap, but it bars, no pun intended, it bars the water from accessing. But if you've got that shower gel and you're all over the place, and what's the issue?
I don't think it would be acceptable because it's it has to go directly onto the skin, the water.
Well, you find out.
Soap is covering the skin.
So what you do is you take the shower first. Let's say it's 3 minutes. You have a 3-minute shower without soap. And then you wash yourself with soap.
That's what you do. Yes, exactly. That's what you do.
Gavin, it makes sense.
That I'm 90% sure. My problem was just the timing. Sorry, I wasn't actually told 20 seconds. I was told to count down to 20. But I think it's about the same. But 3 minutes makes more sense. I'll have to check with one of the guys.